Hi everyone and welcome to my new video. I'm really excited to share my February bullet journal setup with you as I love how it turned out and it might even be my new favorite theme. As always, the process was a bit chaotic, but it was also really fun and I tried out some new techniques too. Anyway, let's get started with my cover page. I wanted to do something romantic and pink for my theme as pink is my favorite color and I thought this would suit the upcoming Valentine's Day as well. I've been wanting to try out something different when it comes to my style for quite a while now, so this month I decided to challenge my drawing skills a little bit and draw these big peonies or peonies? I'm not sure how they are pronounced, but anyway, I don't usually draw big illustrations, so I was a bit nervous how this would turn out, but that was part of the fun as well. Before I started making this cover page, I practiced drawing peonies a little bit and followed this tutorial by InPrint to get the proportions of my sketch right. I think InPrint might have uploaded a video tutorial of the peonies as well, so I will link that in the description if I can find it, and you should definitely check out her channel if you haven't yet. I tried to make the petals look more organic by avoiding drawing very straight lines, so I made them a little bit wavy on the outer edges. This way the petals looked a bit softer, which I really liked. To add more dimension to these flowers, I used a thinner fineliner in size 01 for adding a little bit of line shading in some parts of the petals. Basically, I tried to add these lines on places where the petals had the curvy or wavy lines, if that makes sense, so it would look like the petals have some kind of creases in them. I also tried to use a very light hand when I drew these strokes so they would look a little bit more organic, and I paid attention to where I started the stroke because the end of the stroke will always look a little bit lighter and thinner. Oh, and I used a thicker 05 fineliner for the main outlines earlier, so the line shading would look a little bit lighter. I did the same thing for the leaves, but made some strokes longer than the others so it would look a little bit more organic, and I think these flowers ended up being way easier to draw than I first thought, so definitely give these a try, even though they might seem a little bit intimidating at first. The sketching part was the most difficult part, but after that things always get easier because you can just follow the sketch. Anyway, after erasing the pencil sketch, I started the coloring process and I used kind of similar coloring style that I used on my January setup because I added the color on places where there would be a shadow instead of coloring the whole illustration. Basically, I added the color on top of the line shading so the lines would look a little bit softer, and this way the flowers will look more delicate as well, which was the look I was going for. If you prefer a more colorful look, you could always color all the petals completely and then add shadows on top on places where you added the line shading. I used Tombow dual brush pens for the coloring, and I will write the individual names in the description along with the other supplies that I used in this video. Anyway, I chose this pinky beige color for the leaves instead of green because I felt like that suited the warm color scheme better, and I didn't want to make this cover too summery, which green always reminds me of. Now I'm just adding more dimension to these illustrations by darkening up the shadows with a darker brown, and I also went on top of that with a lighter brown to blend the shades together a little bit. I love how soft these leaves turned out, and they made the flowers look a little bit too light, so I started darkening up some parts of the petals as well to create a more balanced look, because I wanted the flowers to catch more attention. I focused on the bottom of the petals as those parts are usually darker, and switched up to the colored pencils because I didn't have a darker pink Tombow dual brush pen that wouldn't be too dark. If you have any favorite pink Tombow shades, let me know in the comments as I would love to hear them, and I haven't found more darker pinky shades that I would really like. Anyway, I think colored pencils work really well on top of light water-based markers as you can add softer shadows or more texture with them. They also aren't as streaky like water-based markers always are, and that was definitely the biggest challenge for me when I started using markers for the first time. After my flowers were ready, I started working on the rest of the cover page. I don't really know where I got this idea, but I wanted to make some kind of window on my cover page again, so I drew this rectangle with my gold jelly roll, as then I would have some areas that would be easy to cut, or at least a little bit easier. If you are going to do this, be very careful, and I also recommend adding a cutting mat or thick cardstock behind the page, so you don't accidentally cut to the next pages. I still don't have a cutting mat, so I used a cardstock, and that worked just fine. I would also recommend using a metallic ruler with the Exacto knife, so you don't ruin your plastic rulers like I've done in the past. But luckily I managed not to cut my rulers this time. Cutting out the flowers was definitely challenging, and I tried to leave some white paper around them so I wouldn't accidentally cut out some parts of the flowers, and that way the flowers would stand out from the background as well. After I had cut out the window, I started to work on the background. I wanted to make a collage behind the window as I thought that would look really nice and be a little bit different compared to my usual style, so I tore some different kinds of papers and placed them on this pink cardstock while flipping the page on the top back and forth to see how it would look like behind the window. I wanted to use this pink cardstock for my monthly spread as well, so I decided to glue it on the same page instead of the page on the right. If you'd like to, you could also make a flip note from this pink cardstock like I did for my December cover page, and that way you could use the other side of it for some random notes, for example. Anyway, I added this little piece of tracing paper so I could write the February header there, and I sketched that out first so I could make sure it would be on the center of the page. Now looking back, I definitely could have written that straight onto the pink paper as well, but that had more texture, so I'm not sure how the lettering would have looked on it. Now that my cover page is finally finished, I started working on my quote page. The quote I chose for this month goes like this: "A flower does not think of competing to the flower next to it, it just blooms." For me, this quote is a good reminder that I shouldn't compare myself to others, as blooming happens when I focus on doing my own thing and believing in myself. Comparing myself to others is definitely something I've been struggling with lately, as I'm now at that age where people around me start buying houses and all that adult stuff which I'm not really ready for yet, so this quote really resonated with me. It's okay to take your time and do things at your own pace, and it's also okay to have different kinds of dreams for the future. Anyway, I kept this page very simple and just added a little more simplistic flower on the bottom and a golden frame. I'm very happy with how this cover spread turned out, and I'm also really proud of myself that I decided to try out something different with it. Next I started making my monthly spread, and because the pink paper was a little bit see-through and I wanted to make sure that you couldn't see my calendar through it, I decided to make it on this dotted craft paper that I cut out from my Memo of Norway notebook. I used a light acrylograph pen for the calendar instead of white or black, so it would look a little bit softer. I think this craft paper calendar instantly made the spread a little bit more interesting, and I also like how it looks on top of the pink paper. I actually hadn't sketched anything on this page, so I wasn't sure how this would turn out, but I decided to embrace the process and write the header without sketching it first, which was very brave of me, but luckily it turned out pretty good. The top of the page was looking pretty empty, so I drew these little leaf doodles next to the header, and I didn't sketch these out either. I think I used a pigma micron in size 03 for these, and after the outlines were ready, I colored them with a Tombow dual brush pens in the shades 942 and 977. I used the same coloring technique as I used on the previous illustrations to keep this theme somewhat cohesive, And I think it worked out pretty well for the smaller doodles as well. Finally, I added some golden sparkles with my gold jelly roll and also colored the little berries with it. On the page on the right, I made my weekly planning section, which is a must-have for me, and I first used this light pink shade, but it looked too cool toned compared to the pink paper, so I ended up going over that with the shade 942. I also decided to add this little piece of craft paper on the first box, so these two pages would look a little bit more cohesive with the style of them, and I think this made the spread look a lot better as I was a bit nervous at first how it would turn out. For the header, I used Tombow fudenosuke pen and the same acrylograph pen that I used for the calendar, and I also decided to add a little note section on the bottom of the spread because I found that very helpful in December when I was planning my filming schedule. Speaking about filming schedule, I posted my 2022 flip through last week, so definitely go check that out if you would like to see how I ended up using the spreads that I made last year, or if you are curious about how I, for example, fill in my trackers. For my happy trackers this month, I decided to cut out these mini calendars once again, as I really like the look of them and I thought they suited this more scrapbook kind of style perfectly. I also cut out the same pink paper that I used in the previous spreads to make my mood tracker a little bit more colorful. Drawing the grid on top of that was a little bit tricky because the pink paper doesn't have any dots in it, so using a ruler might have been a bit better idea, but I wanted to freehand them still. My secret for freehanding the lines is to drag the pen towards my body and keep my wrist in the same position the whole time. Usually it works pretty well, but this time my hand kind of got stuck on the mini calendars, so the horizontal lines ended up being a little bit wonky, but that's fine. I'm tracking the same habits that I usually do, like taking my vitamins and making my bed in the morning, but I added one new habit here, which is using hair oil, and I'm going to use that mainly on my scalp, which tends to get dry especially during winter. I also really want to try out making rosemary water for my hair, as I've heard that it helps to make it grow faster and it's also good for the hair in general. I would love to hear if you have ever tried it, as it would be interesting to hear about your experience and whether it worked or not. Anyway, I decided to draw these little peonies or peonies here on the sides, as they were looking a bit empty and drawing them in the smaller size was a bit challenging, but I think they ended up looking really pretty. I thought that this setup would take a lot longer, but it was surprisingly quick as it took 4.5 hours, which might sound like a lot, but there have been themes that took way longer, so this was a quick theme for me, and in the end I didn't end up drawing that much. The drawing process for the smaller peony was exactly the same as for the flowers on my cover page, so I'm not going to explain it again, but if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I could also do a short on how I sketch these peonies if you are interested, so maybe leave a pen emoji in the comments if that's something you would like to see. I would also like to hear if there are any themes you would like to see from me, so leave those in the comments as well. I actually had a bit of an art block this month as I felt quite burnt out and tired after such a busy December, so coming up with this theme was a challenge for me, but I'm very glad that I was able to create something I really like, as I didn't think I would be able to do that this month. I've been into this scrapbooking style lately because the different textures look really pretty in my opinion, so I added some of the same papers that I used earlier on the top of the spread, and I think this tied the setup together nicely. The old book page is actually printed because I just can't use real books for that, because tearing them apart would feel very wrong. I will leave a link to the book page printable that I used in case you are interested and have the same problem as I do. Anyway, lastly I just wrote the different moods I'm tracking on the bottom of the spread, and the way this tracker works is that I will add one or multiple symbols in one box every day. I started using these weekly thoughts and monthly review spread in the beginning of this year again, and I did end up liking it a lot, so I decided to include it in this setup as well. I hadn't sketched out the layout for the weekly thoughts section, so I thought I would show you how I do that in this video, and you can see how I use my grid spacing ruler as well. The pink color shows the weekly thoughts layout, so I aligned the ruler with the notebook page and marked down the spacing with a pencil, and this saved a lot of time because I didn't have to count the dots or figure out how much space I could use to fit the 4 boxes here. If you would like to see how I made this grid spacing ruler, go watch my 2023 bullet journal setup video. I got this idea from Tracy, and I will link her YouTube video and channel in the description box as well. In this weekly thoughts page, I will write a little recap of my week and things like how I was feeling, what I did, and if there was something I struggled with. This weekly recap helps to be mindful about how you are spending your time and how you are feeling, and for me it has been really helpful because I can try to change things up to make the next week better or check in with how I'm doing with my goals or projects, for example. And this helps to write the monthly review as well. For my weeklies this month, I decided to make all of them in this one dot store layout, so I would have them all ready to use, and that way I couldn't procrastinate with setting them up, which is one thing I've been struggling with in January. I will only set up the first weekly spread in this video, so I can still change up the layouts for upcoming weeklies if I like to. I kept this layout more on the symbol side, and it was pretty quick to set up as well. I always like to include a mini calendar in my weekly spreads because it's nice to have a little overview of the month, which helps to see how fast time is going by. I used my trusty old Tombow dual frost pen in the shade 942 for this spread, and this is probably my go-to Tombow shade as I use it all the time. Crayola colors of the world markers probably would have similar shades as well, but I feel like Tombows are a bit easier to use when you draw layouts like this or want to highlight specific areas. Because I really like the collage look on my cover page and tracker spread, I decided to add the same papers in this spread as well for decorations, and that also saved a lot of time, which was nice. I also used this light pink shade to add a little bit more color to this spread, and luckily it worked a lot better on this spread compared to my monthly spread, so I didn't have to go over that this time. Anyway, I wanted to add a little bit more decorations on top of the collages and decided to use tracing paper where I just traced the flowers on the previous spread and cut out the excess paper. This was super quick to do and kind of looks like a transparent sticker, which was pretty cool. I also used a glue stick instead of glue tape when I attached this on the page, because glue dries clear and the glue tape has some blue dots that would have shown up through the drawing. I love how the spread and the decorations turned out, and I will definitely use this technique with tracing paper again, as it was super easy and fun. Now it's time for the final flip through. I love how this theme turned out, and it might be my new favorite theme because I just had a lot of fun setting this up. It's also cool to see that I'm now a lot more comfortable with the scrapbooking style compared to last year, for example, when I first started experimenting with it. I remember that tearing paper felt a little bit scary for some reason back then, but now it's really fun and therapeutic, so you live and you learn, I guess. I hope you enjoyed this video, and remember to leave a like and a rose emoji in the comments if you did. Hopefully you also found some new ideas or inspiration from this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye bye!